just to kind of show, our respective constituents that, because that's between 35 of us, we're reaching all 3 million people in the state, that we're endorsing her for a reason, because she's one of us, and her opponent is not. And, when it comes down to interpreting the law, when you say that, going by the Constitution, not legislating from the bench, it's what you want. You don't want somebody injecting their opinions and their beliefs into law, or just disagreeing with the legislature on a piece of legislation and overturning it because they just don't think it's right. If the Constitution and the law doesn't allow that, it shouldn't be getting done. The issue that I take is when you see a lot of these decisions, be it the Supreme Court or at the federal level or here at the state level, or even in our appeals court, you have all these split decisions. 2 people go this way, 3 people go that way. What do you think that is? Your ideology. And those things do matter. And so, hopefully you all get out here and the points of contact that you have within this community, with family and friends and folks you go to church with, you work with, and let them know who's in this race. And if their beliefs are aligned with ours, they need to be supporting Barbara Webb, and tell their friends to get out there and support Barbara Webb, because it's going to be a close race, and a lot of people don't know. It is settled in the primary. There's not going to be an election in November for the Supreme Court race. But the other thing is that there's appeals court races. We have a strong candidate up here. Her name is Johnny Copeland out of Mountain Home. She's going to be a circuit court judge. She ran unopposed, thankfully, this time. Wouldn't matter if she would have won anyway. But she lost to another fella, Barbara Webb, another liberal Democrat. Been on this appeals court for about 8 years. And, always it's somewhat frustrating for me is that people sometimes know more about what's going on at the federal level with a Kavanaugh or a Gorsuch, but we don't pay as close attention in our backyard. And folks, I was just as guilty until I got into the Senate and not paying attention to these things. And so, it's incredibly easy to do, but that's an area where my eyes have really been opened into seeing how these races matter, especially our judicial races, because they are making decisions that can literally not just last our lifetimes, children or grandchildren. And so these are things that are very, very important. And I've seen a number of cases that have been overturned with the appeals court that I think some of y'all probably read some of these cases in our local newspaper. Make your stomach turn. And you let these folks out that ought to be killed, but they let them out on some BS technicality, or they'll say, they'll come up with some ridiculous reason. And if you see what I see, and you kind of know some of the things that I know about who these people are and what their ideology is, I'm like, kind of crazy how the conservatives over here were voting this way, and the Democrats and the left of center over here voting the other way. So these things do matter. I wish in a perfect world we would come out and just say, you identify, go out and tell people where you're at. Because I sure as heck want to know that before somebody gets, one of these positions. There was some disagreements between the governor and the legislature earlier, a few years ago, and whether or not the governor should have the authority to appoint these judges. Well, short side is that, yeah, it'd be more likely to get a Republican or conservative Supreme Court justice. But I think the longer play there is to make sure that that power stays with the people, and that the people we do our job collectively to become informed. Because that's our response, that's our collective responsibility of, with power and freedom and things come responsibility. And so not to just deceive that, because right now you might have a Republican governor, but that could change on any given time. And so that's just something that I think these judicial races, and not just in the Supreme Court, but our appeals court, our circuit court, our district courts, that we pay close attention to those things. And they're not able to really get into the political aspect of this. And you can kind of read between the lines when they say about interpreting the Constitution or not legislating from the bench. That's conservative code words for I'm one of you. But not everybody does read between those lines. And so Barbara, I know her personally. She is a great lady. I think she'll be a tremendous justice. I know our good friend Sean Womack is supporting her, and he needs another conservative out there on the bench. So let's do our part here in Marion County to spread the word on her and do what we can to help get her, because she is at a disadvantage with not having judge in front of her name.
Is she a Webb or a Womack?
Well, her maiden name is Womack.
Okay.
She's not related to Sean by any doubt.
Okay. Well,
so
Senator Cotton was back in Womack, and I wanted to make sure we was on
it's the same. Yeah, he came out and endorsed her
right.
this week, if not yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think it was too. And so even with these endorsements, and certainly Senator Cotton carries a lot more than just the entire Senate Republican caucus, obviously. Even then, that's not anything that we can just do that and assume that the message is going to get out to the masses and everybody's going to see that. It's really people that you all at the ground level that are getting out there and talking to your points of contact and making sure that they understand that, because it's just, I say surprising, but it's really not, because I was one of these people too 5 years ago that just don't really see that or understand that. You just see Judge so-and-so on the ballot, and you're like, wow, they're already a judge. They've been bad, they wouldn't be a judge anymore. So you check that box. And for Arkansas being a red state and being fairly conservative, it's kind of unique and ironic that we do have some fairly liberal judges out there that just aren't in Pulaski County. And with that, I will segue over to the other part. I just wanted to make sure that, because my good friend Barbara couldn't go partisan, that's what she got me here for. Regarding the refugees, we did have our city-county local meeting last month, and a development that came about 4 or 5 days after that meeting was a federal judge overturned President Trump's directive that said that the governors and local elected officials had to sign off in order for refugees to be located in that state. He said that was unconstitutional, and so he overturned that. I'll leave it to you all where you think that person's ideology is. So the governor signing off on it is a non-issue anymore, because now that doesn't matter. I think we're a lot of confusion in the backlash, and it could have honestly been handled differently, and I visited with his staff about it. I think the governor's aware of that. Hopefully, unless you have incredible poker faces, his staff understands the boondoggle that he helped create there, which was lack of information on the front end of people. So who are these people, where are they coming from, and how many? I briefly touched on that last month, but I'll go ahead and kind of cover that again today. We're looking at about 40, 50 probably on the high end of refugees that will be coming into Arkansas. That's more than we've had last year or the year before that. And so these people, they are not coming from the southern border and just showing up at our border and demanding asylum or claiming refugee status. These folks most of them are going to be from African countries, specifically the Congolese, and the others are going to be coming from Middle Eastern countries. And these people, the majority of them, I cannot say all, but the vast majority of them are going to be folks that have assisted our military men and women overseas in helping our service members over there, and they've done that to the detriment of not only their safety but their family's safety. And so President Trump's made those people a priority as far as refugee status, and I think that that's kind of incumbent upon us as as citizens and country, that if these people have put themselves and their families in harm's way, for a greater cause, I don't know. I really don't think that anybody in this room is going to really have a problem with us opening those doors and welcoming those people in. They've certainly earned that right, and they've done more than I would say myself in fighting for freedom and liberty. They were out there on the front lines, standing shoulder to shoulder with our men and women, and now they're in harm's way. And so I commend the president for making those people a priority. The other part is that in the last year of Obama's administration, in 2017 is the last time that he was able to set the cap for refugees, even though he was only president for about 20 days here. It was about 108,000. President Trump this year has lowered that to 18,000. I think last year it was like 30-something thousand. He's gone down to 18,000. Now, since the Refugee Resettlement Act was passed, and that's not the exact title, but that was passed by Congress back in 1980, America has resettled 3 of the 4 million refugees in the world. Yeah, 3 of 4 million. We outpace every country combined when it comes to resettling these folks. And the point I'm making, and I think a lot of what I heard and when this kind of came out in the press about here in Arkansas, these people coming to Arkansas, was a lot of that's just anger and frustrations with the fact that all you hear in the media and the press is that, oh, if you want border security or a wall, or you want to enforce our immigration laws, or you're a racist, or you're this, or you're that, or you just hate people that don't look like you, or you're not hospitable, or you're not a Christian. And it gets kind of wears on you after a while when you keep on hearing that stuff, and specifically when you sit here and you see that if you just want to look at the facts and the data, America's been blazing the trail when it comes to opening up our doors and welcoming people in. When I'm going to say that we've taken in 3 or 4 million people over the past 40 years, and to say that we're not hospitable, I mean, we have done more than every other country combined. And so I think that was part of the boiling point of some frustration, is that people are just like, we're doing our part. It's time for the rest of the world to help out. President Trump appreciates that, and I'm sure he understands that. I've not had any direct conversations with him. Part of his premise for lowering the caps for refugees was certainly the crisis that we have at the southern border, and with all these folks flooding across the southern border. We have about 12, 13 million people in this country right now that have come across the southern border that are here illegally, and we're dealing with that. And we've also got, there's umpteen hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that are overseas, that are in refugee camps and displaced, that are seeking refugee status, and they have increased the vetting process. It's about 18 to 24 months. And just because you're in a refugee camp or you've been displaced does not guarantee you a slot. Some of these people are waiting for years. They don't all come to America, but a good portion of them do end up coming here. And the president has been vocal in saying that this is not America's burden alone to shoulder. That this is a part of all developed countries need to share in that. And so when he talks about our immigration crisis and saying that we've got literally 12 to 13 million people here illegally, and we got to deal with that we kind of got our hands full here too. And so other people need to be chipping in. And it's easy for them to start lobbing stones at America and calling us names and saying that we don't like all these other people. Well, you know what? Your actions always say a lot more than your actions always say a lot more than your words. So when your country's taking in a fraction of 1% of the world's refugees, and we've taken in about 80%, and you're lobbing stones at us, yeah, it's kind of offensive. But for the purposes of here in Arkansas, we're looking at not 40 families, 40 people. These are mostly going to go over to northwest Arkansas. After their resettlement period, and I'm still not clear on what constitutes resettlement, they're free to move anywhere in the country, not just in the state, but anywhere in the country. And even under the president's now return directive, laws say that they could have still come to Arkansas. What they wouldn't have been eligible was for some of the federal assistance that goes along with the resettlements to help them with housing or utilities and food stamps and things like that. So if they had gone to a state where the governor didn't sign off, or the local elected officials, they would have lost the eligibility to receive some of those benefits, which probably would have made it unlikely for them to do so. But they still would have had that ability, and there could have done nothing legally to stop that. But the whole, just kind of the cluster and how that was handled on the front end, as I was telling his chief of staff, I said, y'all made the cardinal mistake of thinking that everybody understood the difference between an illegal immigrant, an immigrant, and a refugee. And it's not because people are dumb, it's because this stuff is coming at, you're getting hit from all different angles, and you hear all these narratives on the news, and you read in the newspaper or online. And so when you sit down and explain to people what it is and what's going on, they get it. But when you just put a press release out the day before Christmas with no correlating information, and as a senator, I was hearing 4,000+ people, and I was like, wait a minute, that's a lot of people. Now when I heard it was 40 people, well, it's not. So my concerns shifted from the cost and security to now I was kind of upset that why did you not give me, my colleagues, some talking points and tell us these things? Because we're on the front lines with the citizens of the states in our respective districts, and we're going to be the first ones to hear the feedback. And in this case, it was not always positive feedback, but we could have helped refute some of that and diffuse some of that situation had we had this information on the front end. And so either way, that's kind of water under the bridge, and you can't go back and do it over. I'm pretty confident that the governor and his staff see that was not handled in the best way. But where it's at now is that the federal judge has overturned the president's directive, allowing the states for the governor and the local officials to sign off. And so that's going back to the way that it's been done for the past 40 years.
5 minutes, and we'd like to have some questions if we could.
I'm open for questions.
Okay.
Not your great with your cues.
I'm your handler. Okay. Who has a question for Scott? Anybody? Stand up, please.
I was just curious how they decide where they're going to go. Like you said, Northwest Arkansas. How do they decide that?
So, I honestly, I can't tell you. I can think what I just like kind of guesstimate is there's more job prospects over in that neck of the woods, and the Canopy. And it's Canopy. It's a resettlement organization a national organization that works for the resettlement of refugees. Their branch and their office in Arkansas is over in Fayetteville. And so I think for that, and then for just naturally that there's just more job opportunities over there, that's tend to be where they're going to be resettled. And I want to say that we're looking at about probably 80% of these folks are going to be coming from the Congolese. And there's a crazy war that's been going on for eons over there. And so there are literally millions of people that are displaced. Now, does that mean that every single one of them, or 80-something% of them, should get an automatic ticket into America? And the president says no, and I support that. And it's not because we're horrible people, because it's not just inherently our burden alone to shoulder. And I really support that. And if there's any presidential administration that I would trust as far as vetting, it would be this one. I wouldn't have had that same confidence with our previous administration to certainly get up in front of my constituents and sit here and say that, hey, this is a kind of a difficult issue and there's opinions across the board, but I'll get up here and say that I feel comfortable with these 18,000 people that he's going to be letting in, and that his administration has done some thorough vetting. Like I said, this is 18 to 24 month process. So it's not a wham bam through the door, here's your plane ticket.
The fact that it's 18,000, not 180.
Oh, absolutely. So he took it from 110,000 in 2017, and even in 2017, I think he lowered it to 50 or 44,000. And then last year, I think it was like around 30-something thousand. And now this year, he's lowered it to 18,000. And so the president has caught a lot of flack from that for the left. But I don't give a damn if he raised it to 200,000, they're still going to be hitting it. It wouldn't even matter. You know, if he could raise it to 200,000, it'd still be like, well, you know what? We got a big country. We could take it $1 million. Why aren't we doing that? It would never end.
I'm too loud by the microphone. Yeah.
Any other questions? Go, Rick.
I got one. The HB 1626, the Bible course in public schools, I noticed that was passed. It looks like almost overwhelmingly passed. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
1826. So did we pass that last year?
I don't know. I got the book. That's all I know. It's on the Bible course in public schools.
That allowed them to teach the Bible. I don't know if it I can't remember if it made it. I don't know if it made it mandatory. I think it allows it to be taught in public schools.
Allows, but it's not mandatory.
Yeah, and I don't quote me on that. You know, we're doing like 2,000 plus bills in a session, so I will forget inevitably details of any number of them. But it is, I want to say that it opened it up to say schools. They can make that decision at their level if they want to teach the Bible in a class or not. The government, the state is not going to prohibit that.
You're saying it's just not against the law, that the schools.
Absolutely, because you know there's a push from people saying we're going to take God and everything out of schools, out of government, out of everything.
Yeah.
And if I'm recalling things correctly, just don't hold my feet so close to the fire that I can't get out of it. Is that I think what that did is it allowed the local districts to make that decision, and the state's not going to interject into that.
Because you have a space or whatever.
Exactly.
School. Sure.
So like nobody's like, so if somebody wanted to come and say that, you know, and appeal to the state, well, you know, that was kind of us clear in legislation saying no, that district can make that decision, and that there's no state law that's going to supersede that they could sue. That, you know, they can naturally, you know, anybody can go off and file a lawsuit. But the part of that is that we are a Christian country. That's what we were founded on. God is intertwined into every aspect of our life, government, personal, and it's been like that for eons. And there's this incredible shift to push that out and to have us become a secular country. There is and that's not news to anybody in here. That's getting done, and that's happening now, and that there's efforts on there. I wouldn't mandatory one that had to have schools that were forced to teach any religion, to be honest. But I certainly, knowing Arkansas, that if they're going to teach it, it's going to be in the Bible. And if 98% of this district is in agreement and they want to have a prayer before a football game, or they want to have a Bible study class at that school, and 98, 99% of the people in there, that's what they want, well, you know what? We ought to be able to make that decision.
Any other questions?
John, we wanna talk about the landfill?
Got a question over there.
We can.
I rarely go through a week of reading paper where I don't see that someone's been released from a state prison 7, 8, 9 times. Is there anything at the state level that's underway to shore up the state prison system so that people are serving their time? and
So,
there's not a burden on the
very
county?
good question, and thank you for that. So, we're in the process of building, it's gonna be a private prison down there in southern Arkansas, and I should be able to tell you what county it's in, and I can't for the life of me right now, but it's right there at the state line in Louisiana, and it's gonna be a private prison. It's about a $40 million prison they're building. The difficulty is in the prisons is that there's never been, and it's not a Republican or a Democrat, it's the appetite to go off and spend, $150-something million if you're gonna build a maximum security, prison, and then come up with $35-40 million a year to operate that. And inherently, when you start looking at, at revenues and taxes, and the people are gonna say, well, I don't want to pay any tax, but if I'm gonna, I want my road to get paid, or I want my kids, awesome teacher to get a little pay bump, or that it's difficult. It's a difficult sell, but it's something that needs to be addressed. And if we're not going to do it, then I at least think that people in my position need to be honest and say this is why we're not doing it. The other part of that is you've got people that are, and as we're dealing with these crisis intervention centers, I think we have 8 of them, Chris. Is that right? We got 8 crisis intervention centers.
I thought we actually had more, but.
Okay, it might be, and again, it might be more. It might be 16. But this is supposed to divert people with mental health issues or addiction issues to go from jail and not directly into prison, but to seek help. The problem with addiction is that you can offer an incredible amount of resources. I have a cousin. I've only got 2 cousins. My oldest one, Mike, he's addicted to heroin. His dad's a successful businessman in Houston, has plenty of money, has sent him to some great rehab organizations. He's been out of every one of them. He's been locked up in a prison. He got released a couple months ago. I don't know if Pike's hit his bottom of the barrel yet, and it's crazy. And I tell you all that to say that this is not like something that just affects low income or people that come from these environments. I mean, it's kind of across, it's like cancer. It really doesn't discriminate. And so the issue that you run into is that, a lot of these people will also commit other crimes. So they're going to do a break-in and entering or an armed robbery or assault or something. And if your dad's an orthopedic surgeon making $500,000 a year and giving you $3,000 a month and you're 30 years old, you might not have to go off and commit those crimes, but you're still an addict. So sometimes at the prison, it's not just the drug, it's the crimes that you also commit. And listen, I actually think that we need to tighten that up. I mean, some of these people, and I would say just specifically some of these sexual predators out there, it is obscene that you've got folks out there that are less than 4 or 5-year-old kids, and they go down for 5 or 6 years, get released early. You don't do that because you had a bad day or you made a bad decision. You're a monster, and you do not rehabilitate that. I actually looked at a bill to make these folks eligible for the death penalty, getting back into the judicial part of things. Apparently, at some point along the way, that was ruled unconstitutional and cruel and inhumane punishment. Well, now I have to look at just what we can do besides killing them, so there's the next step. But I went to one of our bill classes, and I asked, surely I can't be the first legislator that's ever come here. It's like, how can we make pedophiles eligible for the death penalty? And he's like, nope. I was like, I've already got it, how I want to draft it. Here's the age limit. Here's the contact and the specifics. And to be really narrow, he comes back to me a week later. He goes, yeah, case number, docket number, da-da-da-da, New Orleans, da-da. And I'm like, so you're telling me we can't do it. But here's the thing. Do we as a society, are we willing to incur a cost to say, hey, those sickos, I don't care if it's going to cost us $35,000 a year to keep them locked up. Because I actually think there's some crimes out there. Breaking and entering and stealing some scrap metal from your neighbors because you're addicted to heroin, do I think that you should be in prison forever? No. Some of these pedophiles and these sexual perverts, absolutely. Because what they do to these kids, they have robbed them of their lives and their futures. They'll never be the same. And it is unspeakable. And when I see people like that that get out earlier than some of these, some of these drug offenders or addicts, and even people that might commit an robbery or assault, thinking like, well, those aren't great things either. But I don't really know how to put it on the same platform as, being a sexual predator. And so the big part is having the funds to do it. I don't think, especially here in a state like Arkansas, that it's not a lack of like, we just really want to be soft on crime. Boils down to money. And, I tell you, we got Benny Magnus, who's the chairman of the board for the Department of Corrections up here. He's been the chairman for 16 years now. He can tell you some things and some stories that'll make your head spin. But your county jails get backlogged. You got to open up space. Inevitably, people get released. If we're going to really be able to clamp down on that, then we're going to have a conversation to say, are we going to be really to build, more prisons and incur not just the expense of building that, but actually operating that and everything that's going to entail.
And to that note, I think Marion and Baxter County have both stepped up and they've increased the size of their jail.
Yeah, but these are not people that we can't keep like a county jail.
Right.
County jails are oftentimes doing more and holding on to people longer for lack of bed space.
Right.
And they also get a lower reimbursement rate from the state than what prisons do, and that's a point of contention. That's going to get increased, but it's still not going to bring them up to where others are.
I think I would like to echo what the previous comment was. I think the Baxter Bulletin anymore kind of likes to say, hey, this person that we arrested has been arrested 27 other times.
Yeah. And
he gets arrested, he's out on bail, the deputies know him. So, there's something wrong with that.
And I don't think anybody would like, I'm no different. When I look at that, it's like, this is somebody's 27th, 30th encounter with law enforcement. They've been to prison 8 times. At some point, this is the thing to go back into addiction. At some point, how many chances do you get? Now, some of these crimes, and I can't speak specifically, and Chris could do a much better job of fielding some of these questions than I. But I don't say that every single crime, even if he did it 20 times, might constitute a life sentence.
Okay, why is he out on bail doing it over and over again?
Some of these people, listen, they are never going to learn. They're never going to get the message. It ain't ever going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
The
Yeah,
thing is,
why would you stop?
why would the criminals stop?
Yeah, nothing's going to do.
They know what's going to happen.
No.
Chris, do you think like a lot of these people that you're dealing with, that you see come through the courts, that they already know what's going to happen, what the
If they
consequences are going to
understood
be?
the law, they continue to commit crimes all the time. I'm sorry, but the legislature has watered things down so much with regard to parole eligibility at the request of the parole board.
Yep.
That anybody I sentence to 6 years or less on a nonviolent, non-sexual offense, they're parole eligible immediately. Immediately.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Now, so when you see somebody gets 4 years, all I've done is give them a slap on the wrist. The only long-term consequence is that record will stay. In Arkansas now, because of our legislature, if you plead to, say, a Class B, or say a Class C theft, you stole something worth between $5,000 and $25,000. As soon as you complete probation, if you've paid your costs, restitution, and everything, the next day you can file to have your record sealed. The next day.
Does that automatically mean that it gets sealed just because you file? Does that?
Routinely, the judges seal it.
Do they always do that? Is that like?
I've objected to a number of them. I've been overruled a number of times. They've agreed with me a number of times.
But more often than not, they do get sealed. Is that a fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the law says that, if you do X, Y, and Z,
yeah.
You can file a petition, and if there's nothing I have, like, Judge, I don't want him to, that's not a particularly good argument. We did have one sealed that I'm asking the judge to reconsider because they didn't notify me, and it involves a crime that I don't believe ought to be sealed.
Yes, ma'am.
I come from another state, and I believe my husband's correct in that the people have spoken. They want people kept in custody. That's why the jails are getting more money. Have you ever looked at the other states? I'm from Arizona. We have a truth in sentencing. You have to serve 85%, if not 100%. None of this getting out after a day. If you commit a crime while on bond, you are held non-bondable because you showed that you're a risk to the community by committing a second crime. Maybe looked at any of that stuff?
We have, and
one more thing, the Sexually Violent Predator Act, we have a law there that says if you go to prison for being a child molester or something else, if you're about to get out because you served your sentence, they have a sexually violent predator law that they do a civil hearing and commit you civilly so you don't get out.
So you don't get out.
That's right.
So historically, I think with probably most legislators, when you're looking at a new piece of legislation, you always try to look around and see like what other states have done, because you just try to assume that you're not the first person that's thought about this, or you're not the only state that's dealt with this problem. In my opinion, and again, I'm not just saying that there's nobody that would differ with me on this, but I feel fairly convicted in it. You know, what this all comes back to is oftentimes a money, or in this case, a lack thereof, and coming up with the funding to be able to do that. And again, I don't want to. That's not actually. I'm not going to sit here and say that was a Democratic issue. So I don't care who the governor was or what General Assembly, what party was controlling it. It's the lack of the will to really want to do that. We passed a bill in the Senate, I think 2 years ago, that Senator Brian King out of Carroll County ran, and forget it might have been up to 80% of the sentence. We got it through the House or the Senate, and it failed in the House. And I think everybody knew it was going to fail in the House. So this is going to add an additional $27–30 million a year into the budget that wasn't in the budget that the government didn't have in his plan. And so it was an easy vote for me or anybody in the Senate to take. And then they killed it over. They killed it over in a House committee. And that kind of stuff happens in politics. Just the Lord have mercy all the time. But not to take anybody off the hook from the legislature, the governor, to anybody else, or even to citizens, because inevitably money's going to come from somewhere. It ain't just going to government gets it from you all. And so, in looking at this, and I think the important thing is, and listening to people like Chris and Benny and others, is that, I mean, throw Benny under the bus, but he's told me a number of times, he's like, I know my boss don't want to hear, by God, we're going to need another prison.
It needs to become a higher priority for the state, I think. It really does.
Yeah, and it becomes this. Are you going to build your way out of it? How many? If you build it, they will come.
But if you don't, then you have that cancerous effect you talked about in societies, in the small towns and the cities that really erode the value of the state.
Fuels all this? And that's kind of one of the questions that I go over oftentimes, like when I'm driving, like, and not just with crime, like society in general. Like, today, there's a lot of people that they're not embarrassed if they've been to jail or prison, or if a loved one has. I mean, you go back 40, 50 years ago, it was like a scarlet letter on your damn forehead. I mean, this is nothing that, anybody, not just your family, but all your acquaintances, everybody in your neighborhood, in your town. And so, but now, we just become somewhat immune to all of this. And you can use whatever excuse that you want to, poverty or this or that, or I didn't know. Like, the fact of the matter is, I know plenty of people with not any money that are exceptionally awesome people and contributors to our society and country, and they are not out there committing crimes and trying to come up with reasons and excuses to justify them committing crimes. So to say that it's just, to tie it to a specific circumstance or incident and to use that as a justification is ridiculous. But what this will come down to is money. And what's really going to drive it is obviously going to be at the executive level, the governor, because he's got the biggest platform, the biggest microphone to collectively reach the most people. And it's, and again, I'm going to fault Asa for it. It's like, they're going to look at the political landscape and see like, well, we can push this far, but, there's a reason why none of my predecessors have done this. It's going to be, and we have a private prison, that's getting built now. Right. So, a lot of people don't like these private prisons. I personally could give a damn less.
Well, I think you see it happen in waves, and the first kind of wave that's going through the state is counties trying to make up the shortfall and expanding their jails to help, supplant what the state is not providing in beds. And, you see many counties throughout the state have already done that. That can't happen a second wave before the state takes action. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and that's a fair point. But that's like, again, collectively, what we all kind of have to land on is our priority list.
Exactly.
And too often it's sitting in Little Rock or this and that, and it's not only the citizens playing an active role in that process and that conversation. And this is a big issue. And when we do something like this, I mean, it's going to be big money. Is that going to come from higher ed? Is that going to come from, I mean, where is that initially going to come from? I can tell you this, there's not an agency out there, not to say there's not fat to be trimmed, but you're not going to do it like a one agency director. It's like, yeah, well, we got this, we really got about 12% left in our budget,
But as revenues grow through just the normal operation of the state, that needs to be earmarked and needs to be put up there at a higher level.
The problem with that though is that the last time that Arkansas spent less money than the year before, the last time that we collectively spent less money than the previous year. Anybody know when that was? I didn't until this week. No, like I said, I didn't actually know. I didn't know until this week. 2008, when the economy hit the skids, and we didn't do it by virtue of choice, it was by virtue of necessity. I mean, obviously, revenues shrunk immensely, and so had to cut spending. So it wasn't like this, oh, we need to cut government and just be proactive. It was, compete with the fire, and that's when we did it. That was the last time, and the only reason that we did it was because it was basically the economy forced it upon us, and we had to respond, which is what any responsible government has to do. Unless you want to be a California or Chicago or Illinois or something and rack up tens of millions of dollars and unfunded.
That's kind of my point. Since 2008, we've seen our economy start expanding, and Arkansas has as well. And so as state revenues have increased, that money hasn't been going to the state penal system. It's been going to other areas. And I think it really needs to be kind of ratcheted up.
And that's a fair point. And I think the part of the difficulty is always predicating what you expect those excess funds to be on any given year. I mean, we do try to budget somewhat conservatively because naturally we need to make sure that that we're not overextending ourselves. But it could be this year we're over $80 million ahead of forecast. I mean, it's crazy. But that that could change. We could be fluctuating by $100+ million on any given year with what what our expectations are, and so to allocate money. And that was one of the governor's kind of disagreements with me and some of my colleagues, and we were saying that we want to use some of our surplus funds that are going for rainy day funds now or long-term reserve. Let's use some of that to help with highway funding. Well, no, we can't do that, and it's like we don't always know what that's going to be. And there were some points of that he was correct on, but that mean that we all don't know there's not going to be at least tens of millions of dollars now, whether that's 180 or 240 or whatever, but it's going to be a lot of money to anybody, here, but you can't always predict what that's going to be or when the economy is going to tailspin. I mean, you can imagine if we get a Bernie Sanders in office, what that's going to do. I mean, so there'll be that immediate backlash if we commit ourselves to something, which is what the governor wanted. And again, there was points of agreement and disagreements. Was a steady funding stream. And I think that's something that what we might really need with prisons is not just attach it to a budget surplus, but a steady funding stream. But the big thing is, and unfortunately in government, and it's just the world, and it's one of my Achilles heels in politics, is that something happens over here and there's this incredible knee-jerk reaction because everybody's outraged, and it's not inherently maybe great policy, but you want to see action and you want to see it yesterday, and so legislature moves, governor signs off on it, and we do it just like that. And then 2-3 years later, you look back and like, man, we really bungled that one. Could have done that one a little bit differently. And so, that's the conversation that I think when the citizens are ready, and I appreciate that. When you all come to me and say, hey, Scott, this needs to be a priority. And if you need to come to me and say, we're going to raise a tax to fund specifically this to keep these individuals locked up, and we're willing to go for that, yeah, I mean, that's the starting point, absolutely. And getting that done is exactly what we're talking about here.
I don't think the problem is prisons, because in the 1980s we have had prisons built and built and built. You can go to any prison in the state of Arkansas and get the same drugs you get right here in Flippin, Arkansas, or Yale, Arkansas. The problem is people don't believe in capital punishment and punch them like they need to be punished. If you do that, it will stop them.
Well, yeah, if they come to Arizona, I've had criminals come to Arizona, 34 prior burglaries he had from a different state. He comes to me and goes, you're going to prison and you're going for over a decade. He couldn't believe it. He goes, but what? I get out every time I do a burglary. It's like, not here.
You
So
jump his damn hands
leave
off it.
Arizona to places like Arkansas, because you know they can get out over and over and over again. And what's the cost to society when the guy's out 3, 4, 5, 6 times committing crimes? Where's the cost to the people then? That's what needs to be looked at. I mean, the crime rate since we've moved here is incredibly going up. I cannot believe it. And almost like, wow, 2 stabbings in the last week, just in this county alone? That's terrible.
Homicides are actually going down. I don't know, like overall crime is, you know, that you're seeing like a lot of things, but like actual like.
But it's a problem, it's the stuff that affects everybody on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And again, the difficult point here is getting a majority of Arkansas, so getting 1+ million people to get on the same page about the way that you're going to tackle that. You know, getting 300,000 people is not going to, you know, is not going to get it done.
You got to look at the states, and the sheriff's right, or the judge is right. If you go look and say, okay, well, gosh, I don't want to come to this state. If I do something wrong, I'm going to prison, and I'm going to be there for a long time.
No.
And there is ways to earmark different specialty taxes to increase the money for new prisons, or which means for keeping them in prison longer.
We have chief police over there flipping probation, selling meth, selling every drug in the world, framing people. He got probation because it was money. It's about the money, it's not about the crime.
Yeah.
I just got through going through, because we're trying to put a penny tax in flipping. So I went through and I started looking. Out of the top 15 cities in America that pay the highest sales tax, Arkansas has got 12 of the 15.
Yeah.
Yellville, Bull Shoals, and if flipping gets his penny tax, that's going to make the 3 of those within 3/4 of a penny of being in that list.
Okay, folks.